Good morning, everybody. My name is Jesse Meekum. I'm the founder of YNAB and this is another Whiteboard Wednesday, done mostly on Wednesdays. Today, based on a suggestion I got from last Whiteboard Wednesday, I kind of wanted to talk about the YNAB story, and since I'm going full bore on this small business initiative, that's just been on my mind. It's just people starting small businesses, being successful with those. So that comment kind of got the juices flowing for me and made me kind of walk down my own kind of memory path for a little bit. And I wanted to share just a couple lessons that I've learned and kind of my own way of looking at things as far as small business goes. This won't be anything about YNAB, the software specifically, or how to use that in your small business. I'm working on a course for that. This free course will launch. But what I wanted to talk about was just kind of how we started. So, and then maybe teach a few lessons on the way. When Julie and I first married, before we got married, I realized in looking at our finances and kind of hypothetically putting them together, I realized we'd be really poor, still in school and all that, and I had a lot of school left, and Julie wouldn't graduate for another year or so, and she was in social work, which was not the most lucrative, career path. So we had to do some number crunching, and I built this spreadsheet and just wanted to track our outflows mainly. And I remember when I was really little, working on my personal, I think it's called Personal Finance Management Merit Badge as a scout. They had you track everything you spent for 90 days. That was the tough part about that merit badge, is you had to do something for 90 days. And I remember doing that, and I remember noticing how I had spent less and less as I tracked my outflows. And so years later, did the same thing again right before I got married. And I just built this thing so we could just basically track. And then I wanted to input our income, and I built that into the spreadsheet as well, having had a spreadsheet class in school and kind of learning how those worked. So I built that, and then once we got married, I realized that there were several issues with what we had been dealing with. The first one was that we were on a variable income. We would work varying hours, and it was just difficult to budget not knowing how much money we had. So when we first got married, I basically came to Julie and said, I think I have an idea for how we can solve this problem. Why don't we just live on our prior month's income? That way we have this known number of what we can deal with. And she said, okay. And so we had the huge advantage of just being married, and people give you money when you get married. And so we just took some of that money, and I said, okay, here's our money. This was our buffer. Didn't have a name at the time. Here's what we'll use this month. And then during this month, we will earn money and use what we earned for the next month. So that was our buffer. And that was rule 4, used to be rule 1. I just thought it was pretty logical that we would budget all of the income and not leave some to do whatever. So that was rule 1. Again, but there were not rules or anything. I wasn't planning on selling this. This was just she and I working together. I also thought it fairly logical that we could kind of do monthly allocations for bigger expenses. And the reason that happened is because Utah, it was the first car I'd ever owned, this one we bought once we were married. We had a couple months when we were first married, we didn't have a car, and that was kind of interesting. We would borrow people's cars to go grocery shopping. But I noticed that we get this mail from the state of Utah, this registration, and they're saying, hey, you have to renew, and it was like $112. Our car was old, so it always had to do emissions, I think. Anyway, so it was like $100-some, $115 or something, and I was just blown away. I had no idea that expense was coming. We were zero-based, and so when you're zero-based, rule 1, you realize when, where you add to one, you need to take away from another, and so we were having to do that. That's what they call whack-a-mole on the forums a lot, trying to balance things out as much as you can by switching things around and pounding out a problem and then pounding out another problem. And that happened. So that kind of made me think, okay, we got to be aware of these longer term expenses and break them into monthly increments. So that $120 or whatever it was, I just said, okay, $10 a month is going to this special category called license and taxes. And then the next year it rolled around, it wouldn't be a problem. And then I realized, as I was working through the budget, I realized that the overages were really creating a problem for us, and I didn't know how to handle it because they were throwing things out of balance. I wanted to be able to zero the category out and start fresh each month. I didn't want to have the negative roll roll into it because I didn't want to constantly be punishing a category and constantly trying to be catching up based on one single event. So I actually just decided, well, the only way the books will balance in this situation is if I pull the money from next month's funds that are available to budget. And so that's what I did. Only well after the fact did I realize that would actually be useful beyond just me trying to balance things out. It's actually, this is rule 3. It's just a really conservative way to manage things because you pay yourself back for those mistakes. So this was all on this big kind of rainbow colored spreadsheet. The whole year was on one big sheet, and you could scroll to the right across on your categories, and you could scroll down all the way for the entire year, and each month was kind of a block. And we used it, and if I wanted to add a new category, I would have to do a ton of work to build that all in. Well, then Porter was going to be born, and so I had started crunching numbers and realized we wouldn't have enough money to be able to make it through my schooling without taking on debt and have Julie be able to stay home and be a full-time mom, which was a big deal for us. So I, started thinking I need to make some extra income. And our rent at the time was $350, utilities included. And we lived in this little basement apartment, and I just thought if I could just build something that would cover our rent, just that $350 a month, that would be huge. So that's what I did. And my first attempt was basically, I was riding home on the bus and from school, and this guy that I knew from my church, he said that he did something online, and I didn't really understand what he did exactly, but I thought, well, he probably knows what he's doing. So I talked with him, and I just said, hey, here's this budget spreadsheet I have. Do you think I could sell this online? And he said, yeah, you could sell that. So I went online, and I checked to see if anyone else was selling spreadsheets, because my first thought was, no one would pay for this. It's a spreadsheet. You could build it on your own. I didn't even take into account the fact that this had taken me, hours. I mean, literally probably 25, 30, 40 hours of just working it, tweaking it, double checking formulas. And a lot of times as you're thinking about starting a small business, you discount your value proposition. I don't know if it's to protect our egos or something, or to shield us from rejection, but we kind of want to say, well, this isn't worth that much, so that when people reject our proposition, we're in agreement with them, and there's no real rejection, because we feel like, oh yeah, well, this isn't really worth that much. So you kind of discount your value proposition, and that's exactly what I did. I thought, well, why would people buy this if it's just a spreadsheet that you can build yourself, Why would people pay you as a consultant if they could find out this same information by reading, the 30 books you've read? You discount that. No one would do that, and people like it distilled down and sold to them, given on a platter, so to speak. So I looked online.